All right. So we're going to revisit this whole Anton Daniels, Corey Holcomb controversy. Now, I spoke about this earlier during a live stream, and some of you, as expected, didn't like my perspective. And you let me know. You let me know. And that's fine. I totally understand that. I understand for my audience that I had a perspective that many people were not expecting, or maybe they didn't like. And there was some backlash. But that's okay. That's okay. As the audience gets to know you, some people will leave, others will show up. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. But for those who don't know, I want to be very transparent and I want to be very honest. Okay? I don't want you to go in here thinking that I'm unbiased. As a matter of fact, I'm very biased. When it comes to Anton Daniels, I'm not a fan of his work, though we do have a lot of things in common. I am a black conservative. He is a black conservative, but I do have a problem with his messaging and his technique, and I'm gonna leave it at that. I would put him in the category of someone like the Hodge twins or a Jesse Lee Peterson or even a Candace Owens to some extent. Now, he may consider that a compliment. I certainly would not, as I like to separate myself from black conservatives that have that type of reputation. But that's no hate towards him. I don't know him personally, obviously, and I'm not a very big fan of his work. I've seen him do various collaborations, and he says some things I agree with, but for the most part, he says things I do not agree with. As for Corey Holcomb, I am a fan of Corey Holcomb. First of all, I think he's a hilarious comedian, and he says a lot of things that I think are on point. Now, Corey keeps it real. Sometimes he keeps it a little too real, and he says things that he ought not say. Sometimes he lets his anger get the best of him. And that's what we're going to talk about, because this situation between the two of them has gotten real. It's gotten serious. And it looks like there could be a potential lawsuit. That's just my conjecture. I also want to make it clear that I'm not an attorney, nor I'm in law enforcement. So this is my layman's perspective of the situation. Okay, so if you come in here and talking about, well, you're not an attorney. Well, I'm right. I'm not an attorney. I didn't go to law school. I'm just looking at the language and what's going on. So let's talk about it. Now, again, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that the two of them, I think it was last week or last Tuesday or Tuesday before last, they had a real spirited debate. And things kind of went haywire. Corey said some things to Anton. Anton said some things to Corey. The two of them got face to face. Let me fast forward to that part. Here we go. Corey gets up and gets in his face, and the two have a shouting match. And it looked like they were going to come to blows, okay? But they didn't. Things just de-escalated, and they handled it like men, which I'm glad it didn't happen, because things like this you don't want to see. But afterwards, Anton was very vocal about his perspective on what happened. He went on various shows and podcasts and live streams giving his account of the story and what he was going to do and what he wasn't going to do, or what Corey wasn't going to do. And there was a lot of hubris, a lot of bravado. He pretty much said he would have beaten Corey up, that Corey didn't want any of that smoke. And he even went and sat down with Nelson Fatback. And we'll play some of that.
Intimidate you and threaten you. And then he folded up just real quick. And I got to be honest with you, it kind of shocked me to see him fold that quick.
Shut up, bitch.
So you see Nelson Fatback here. He's already instigating. Now, I disagree with his perspective. I don't think that Corey Holcomb folded up. But he's trying to throw fuel on the fire, And Anton's going to respond.
It didn't shock me, because what people may not have been able to see is that he was shaking. Like he was shaking like a stripper.
Okay, and that's what I'm talking about right here. I'm going to leave that alone. But you see, one thing you have to understand is don't equate shaking with fear. Shaking just means the presence of adrenaline. In scientific terms, you have something called fight or flight, and they're similar emotions, and the body will react the same way. So just because someone is shaking doesn't necessarily mean they're in flight mode, doesn't necessarily mean they're in fear mode. Shaking can just be the presence of adrenaline. Shaking can mean that someone is enraged. Okay? That means they're on the edge. That means they're about to do something crazy. So shaking doesn't mean fear, necessarily. I mean, some of us that are fans of Dragon Ball Z, for example, how many times have we seen Goku or Vegeta and Piccolo or Gohan, when they get angry, what do? They shake with rage. So don't equate shaking with fear, is what they're trying to do here. Okay? But anyway, my point is that he's done the speaking tour. He's going around, bigging himself up. And yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to bash the guy. But then Corey Holcomb had some statements. He went back on his show, I think the following Tuesday, giving his account of what happened. And again, Corey's a funny guy, but he's going to say some things in this moment, in this exchange, that I think was a little too far. Let me get back to it. I think it was somewhat inappropriate. Okay, so let's listen to what he has to say.
Boy, you use your paper to you would normally never be around. You an ugly ass boy. You an ugly ass boy. You brag on having no children out of wedlock. You got a picture of his daughter?
Now, I'm going to stop right here because I don't want to go there with him. Now, if you want to sit up there and talk about a grown man is ugly and he ain't this and he ain't that, I'm cool with that. But what Corey's going to do here is bring up an image of Anton's daughter. All right? And the thing that's so significant about this is that Anton's daughter, number one, she has nothing to do with this. She has nothing to do with this. We don't know anything about her. Okay? For all we know, she may be a salt of the earth type. Okay? She can't control what her father does. She's not responsible for what her father does. He's an independent man. And see, that's the thing that kind of bothers me. And the second thing that bothers me about it is that his daughter is a minor. She's not an adult. She's a child who goes to school, who has friends. And Corey Holcomb is a big-time comedian. He's very well known in the black community. So imagine her going to school. Okay, and I'm not, let me, no, I'm not even gonna play the audio for it. But he proceeds to mock Anton Daniels' daughter for her looks. He shows a picture of her and he talks about her. Okay, and I'm not gonna repeat the things that he says. But my point is that she has a life outside of her father. She has to go to school. And imagine her going to school and her friends having heard what Corey Holcomb said about her, how they may mock her for that, how they may laugh at her about that. That's a bad situation to be in. That's a bad thing to do. And it's a terrible situation for a child to be in. And that's why I'm not going to play it, because I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable showing that. And the thing about it, this whole situation is, let me go here. Let me go here first. So Anton, in response to that, comes and makes his statement on his show. And I'm gonna fast forward a little bit ahead because he's kind of like Stephen A. Smith. He likes to prattle and bloviate. But I want to get to the part where he talks about his daughter in response to what Corey Holcomb said. Let me see if I can get there.
Junior Olympian, probably has close to over 325 medals, of which 200 and maybe 80 of them are gold, has traveled across the world representing our country, And it's probably the sweetest soul that I personally know. Now, of course, we can be a little bit biased because all of our kids are the sweetest things to us. Those of us that are in our kids' lives and that are participating in our children's lives. But a very, very accomplished minor child, meaning that she's still a child. And one of the things that I tell my daughter every single day is that I want you to stay in a child's place. I never want you to grow up too fast. I never want you to be out here doing things that you're not supposed to do, because you have an expectation on your life. And so the thing that I've always done is try to protect my daughter against the world, from the world. And what this has shown me is that eventually all of our children, and she is still a child because she is an underage child, all of our children eventually will have to see how ugly the world is. All of them. Regardless of how we feel, regardless of what happens, all of our children will have to see, will have to see what the world is. What we as parents are supposed to do is protect them as long as possible, until they have to see what the world does, right? So my focus right now.
And let me say something right quick. Like I said, I'm not a fan of Anton Daniels, but everything that he's saying here, I agree with. As far as being a parent, as far as sheltering your children.
Is trying to figure out the psychological damage, impact, and trauma that has been done to my daughter.
And this is what I'm talking about. This goes back to the thumbnail. Will he sue? Because as you're hearing here talking, he's going to use a certain type of language that would lead us to believe that he's going to pursue litigation about what Corey Holcomb said about his daughter.
I pulling her out of school, early therapy, making sure that she is protected, trying to see what the fallout will be as far as her having to be removed from some of her competitions because of a lot of different things, including online bullying and psychological damage.
You see the words he's saying here? Pulling her out of school, giving her therapy, protecting her. He talked about how she is a competitor. I cut off the part where she's into martial arts, and he mentioned all the medals that she has and how she does all this competition across the globe. How this might be a career for her. And how having Corey Holcomb say all these things about her is causing psychological trauma, taking her out of school. He mentions all these things. And he also says the phrase cyber bullying. That's important.
There's a lot of fallout from what happens to my daughter's life because she is so accomplished. She has some of the greatest schools in the United States of America that has been seeking her out, scholarships, looking for her to join the team. She is on track to be a United States Olympian. She was supposed to be possibly in the next Olympics. And I don't know how damaging this is to her psyche. I don't know. Who knows?
Again, he talks about psychological damage, how damage this will be to her psyche. He's going there.
It's going to be a lifetime of damage. We don't know what butterfly effect things that we do to our children. And the one thing that most fathers, Black fathers, try to do is they try to make sure that their children are protected. That's what we do. As fathers, we don't really care what happens to us, right? Because that's just life. But we never, ever can imagine what would happen to our underage children.
That's another key point. Underage children. I don't know how old his daughter is, but we can just assume that she's under age 18. Well, we know that she's under age 18 if she's an underage child.
No matter what happens to us, we don't want anything. For those of us that are in our daughters' lives, we don't want anything to happen to our children. Under no circumstance. And so I don't know. I think that a lot of people don't really understand the impact. And I'm speaking to all of us, for all of us. We don't always know what the impact is to our children. We don't know the psychological damage, the emotional damage, the wreck that happens in their lives when other people go after children. I thought that children was off limits.
There you go. Now keep that in mind. He says he thought children was off limits. And he says that Corey Holcomb went after his child. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Continuing.
But I guess not. So my number one concern, and I'm gonna say this, and again, this is for all of the civil, awesome Black people out there and people in the United States of America that want to ensure that their children are protected. My number one goal is to always try to figure out how I can protect my underage child. I could have never imagined in 1,000 years the psychological damage and the impact, the cries that I had to hear, you know?
And he's really laying it on heavy. Now he's suggesting that his daughter is traumatized to the point where she was crying over what Corey Holcomb did. So you see what he's doing. Even though he hasn't officially filed a lawsuit, he's laying the groundwork for it.
My immediate concern was, oh my God, who do I call? But I couldn't call anybody because everything was closed at the time. So immediately pulling her out of school, immediately making sure that I go and assess the damage, trying to figure out if we're able to get her into the same competitions coming up. She literally just texted me probably less than 48 hours ago. All of the different competitions that she had lined up for this year. We were supposed to go to Great Britain. We were supposed to go to a lot of places. I don't know if we can still do that. I don't know if that's possible. Because I don't know if she has the, you know, their brain isn't even fully developed. And I'm willing to do anything to protect my child, to make sure that they get the best care possible, to ensure that hopefully she can recover from this. So that's all I have to say. I don't.
Now, I want to be careful with my words here, okay? I've heard some people say, well, he's being performative. He's laying it on heavy, that it's not that serious. And I get that. I get that, especially if you're someone who's not a fan of Anton Daniels and his work. But at the same time, we don't know how his daughter feels regarding this, okay? Whether his feelings are genuine or not, we don't know what her feelings are, okay? And so because that's her father, we have to take him at his word that she's traumatized by what happened. You know, like I said, I'm not a fan of his, but I respect the fact that he's a father, and I respect the fact that his daughter had nothing to do with this. Okay, that's my stance. But this whole situation frustrates me. And it kind of reminds me of this Trevon Boykin situation that happened a couple of months back. You remember Trevon Boykin? He was the one-time Seattle Seahawks rookie quarterback. He was an undrafted free agent. This was a guy who had a lot of issues off the field. And so a lot of teams passed on him, okay? They didn't want him on their roster, but the Seattle Seahawks gave him a chance. And not only that, but Russell Wilson invited him to his home for Thanksgiving. Now, the reason why that's significant is because Russell Wilson does not have the best reputation. And no, I'm not talking about his marriage to Sierra. I'm talking about as an individual. Russell Wilson is known as being fake, selfish, aloof, and self-centered in everything he does. People see him as being plastic or being a politician. They don't see him as being genuine. And these are not my words. These are the words of his coaches that have said things about him, teammates that have leaked things to the press. Everywhere he's gone, whether it be in Seattle, Denver, the locker room has turned against him. He's just not a person that's very likable, okay? But you have this individual here, Trevon Boykin, who goes and does a podcast talking about what it was like to spend Thanksgiving with Russell Wilson. And the whole thing just comes off as cheesy and disrespectful because this man invited you into his home where he didn't have to, you know? And it's really uncharacteristic of Russell Wilson because I know he's known as being standoffish and aloof, doesn't really interact with his teammates. But here he had a young rookie here whom he tried to reach out to. And this guy betrays him like some Instagram groupie. He goes and just tells all the business. And so a lot of people were disgusted with Trevor Boykin for what he did. And the thing that frustrated me about it was it had the opposite effect that he thought it would have. It made Russell Wilson look like a sympathetic figure. Even though he's a hated individual, in this moment, it made people come to his side. Okay? So I go back here with Anton Daniels. Again, I am not a fan of Anton Daniels at all. But what Corey Holcomb did to him makes me sympathetic towards him, because I have to respect the fact that he's a father and he has a daughter that was caught up in this that had nothing to do with this. Okay? And so that's why I was a little frustrated, because I was like, damn, Corey, I want to be on your side in this conflict, but what you did, I can't rock with. I can't go too far with you on that. I can't be on your side. I can't support you. Because it was a low blow. It was a low blow. And I hate the fact that it made me sympathetic towards Anton Daniels. I know that sounds silly, but that's just the way I feel about it. Okay, that's what I think about it. But then the other day, or today, I saw this video. And I had to step back. Now, this is a video that Corey Holcomb made in response to Anton Daniels' response of him attacking his daughter. And it really puts things in a different perspective. Now, this is Corey here. He has on a gorilla mask for whatever reason. But he's going to point out the hypocrisy in Anton Daniels' statements. Let's watch.
It's gay. I'm going to tell you right now to your face.
Listen to what I'm trying to tell you, man. You want to talk about everybody else, wife, kids, and everybody, but when somebody say something about you, y'all got to go to therapy.
Our chicks was looking dusty as right? And so I'm looking at these women, and the women's breath stink, the kids is dirty and nasty. Kids is dirty and nasty.
Hey, look here, boy. I'm going to give you an out. You leave me alone, I'm going to leave you alone. But if you don't, it's going to be more monkey business.
I'm the bad guy.
So you see what Corey Holcomb is doing here, right? He's saying, hey, Anton, you want to drag me through the mud and say that your daughter needed psychological damage for the way that I talked about her? But look at the way that you talked about other people's kids. And he points out the way that Anton came after Dwayne Wade's son or daughter, Zaya, or transitioning son. I don't know what the terminology is, but the way he came after Dwayne Wade's child, who's also underage. And he also played another clip where he was talking about a group of kids here and their parents. You see? So what he's saying is, Anton, you're no different than I am. You've done this before yourself in the past. And so now I'm thinking, okay, that's a great point. Now, I'm not a legal scholar, and I don't know how this will play in civil court. But if you're a person on the jury or the judge, and you have to decide if there's any wrongdoing on Corey Holcomb's side, and you see that Anton is guilty of the same thing, this is going to sway your opinion. Okay? So that's why I had the question mark. Will he sue? Because before seeing this video, I was certain that Anton was going to sue and Anton was going to win. But now after seeing that he was guilty of the same behavior, I'm not so certain. I'm not so certain. But anyway, that's my perspective. You know, that's all I have to say about it. So leave a comment in the comment section and let's have a conversation. now streaming on Patreon. Layman's Journal, Chapter 272. Today we're going to be addressing a very sensitive topic. We're going to be discussing racism, but not in the traditional sense. You see, oftentimes when you discuss race or racism, it's usually between whites and blacks, with an emphasis on how whites have traditionally treated black people, and how the remnants of historic racism or systemic racism are still present through microaggressions. But rarely is it discussed in a way that highlights racism from other minority groups. We don't talk about how Hispanics, Asians, Arabs, and yes, even Africans and African Latinos harbor feelings of racial prejudice towards foundational Black Americans.
Yeah, you mean your food stamps? I'm a Congolese person. I'm not one of you street American black hobo bitch, bro. Okay, don't get it mixed up. Okay, you could have just came here, been nice, we could have a cool conversation. I'm not one of you Black Americans. Moi, je suis Congolais. Je suis Prince du Congo. Tu me connais pas, alright? Don't put me, man. I'm not one of you.
And in this chapter of the Layman's Journal, we're going to see how racism is practiced within the Indian community. But I want you to know ahead of time, I'm going to be using a lot of hostile and inflammatory language in this video. But I want to make it clear that all of my statements are directed at the people featured in the film, as well as real-life examples shown in shared clips. But most importantly, I want you to be aware that I am not, I repeat not, speaking on Indian people as a whole, just the examples given in the video, and how those attitudes from other minority groups have influenced the minds of Black Americans today. And it all starts on November 5th, 2024, the day we re-elected Donald Trump as president. Not only did his re-election trigger a turning point in American politics, but it also signaled a reconsideration of American policy on immigration. The American people wanted Trump to secure the border and remove the 10 to 25 million migrants that were allowed in under the Biden administration. They also want an overhaul of the H-1B visa program, as well as student visa programs, and the deportation of asylum seekers. And if you think that's extreme, here's more. They want the definition of the 14th Amendment to be clarified, with the understanding that it was written exclusively for the children of freed slaves. In short, they want to repeal birthright citizenship for all but foundational Black Americans, destroying what is commonly known as the Anchor Baby program. And for the most part, Trump has done what the people have asked him to do. Now, he has gone soft on the H-1B visa program, but he's been aggressive in his pursuit of illegal immigrants and has fought to restore the true meaning of the 14th Amendment. So while the political left and right have fought over Trump's policies, foundational Black Americans, or FBAs, have remained silent. We've stood on the sideline as Trump and the Republicans have deported immigrants of color, including ones from African and Caribbean nations. And this has baffled those on the left, as Black people are known for standing up for civil liberties, known for fighting for equality for all. You see, prior to 1965, migration was limited to Western and European nations. But it was Black people in the civil rights movement that fought to open it up to people from non-white countries. But 60 years later, we've been silent. We're not standing up for migrants of color anymore, with many of us in approval of Trump's policies against immigration. And it's caused those to ask, what happened to racial solidarity? What happened to the Black and Brown coalitions? And I think the film Mississippi Masala is an excellent answer to that question. You've just seen a preview of my latest video, which you can watch now in its entirety, uncensored and without obstruction, exclusively on Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/Layman's Journal. Hope to see you there. I'm out.